Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hello and welcome to the FemiNinja Project. Today's guest is the very lovely Bryn Brown. So welcome, Bryn.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy. When I talked to you, the first time I talked to you on the phone, it was like, I think I've known this woman all my life.
Soul sister.
I
sure.
know.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You are a business coach, is that correct?
I'm a business coach, yeah. So I never wanted to be in sales. I was not a business person by nature, I didn't think. As a young woman growing up, I went to school for speech therapy.
Wow.
And about 3 years in, decided this isn't for me after having some rotations observing in the clinic. Was like, this is not my jam, right? And so I took a bunch of psychology classes, finished school, got a dual degree, and went out into the workforce at the end of 2007. Not a great time.
No. And with a degree in psychology.
And speech, language, and hearing science.
So you did have the background. You finished the speech?
I did the undergrad, yeah.
Okay.
And I wasn't really excited about going for my master's at the time. I had grown up in Kansas in a small town. I went to school in Kansas, and the plan was New York or LA. I'm getting out. Big city, right? The beach called. I went to LA. Couldn't get a job. Could not get a job. And I won't go too far down the rabbit hole in this story. Came to Denver actually for a year, and then found a job in sales, which promptly moved me back out to LA.
Oh, how funny.
So I did get to make it back out there and lived in Southern California for a long time. But the only jobs I could get were sales. And I kept trying to get out. And 20 years later, I teach sales and business.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's funny how that works.
It is funny how it works. And you just went with it. You just rode with the flow, but you really didn't have much of a choice because you needed a job, right?
Right. And I tried to get, I thought, that at the time, marketing was like the way out. It was this glamorous opportunity to be in marketing. It just sounded really great. And so a lot of jobs would say marketing and sales, but it was really just sales.
So it was the marketing to bring you in.
And so I just followed the breadcrumbs. And the problem, which was not really a problem, but the problem for me was that I was really good at it. And I didn't want to be. I never wanted to be in sales. And I think because I didn't want to sell anything or be perceived as a salesperson, I was actually much better at sales, right? Because there was sort of this natural, non-salesy approach, this human connection that I would prioritize over making the sell. So I made good money, decent money. I mean, it wasn't great to begin with, early in my career. So it was hard to get out because now I'd have to go into an entry-level job somewhere. So I sort of just kept taking the next best step for me, not knowing where that would lead, and knowing that even though I was in sales, there was still something missing, but you just do what you have and do.
Right.
I lived in LA. I was in my 20s.
Wow.
I was a beach bum.
Wow. Well, there is a payoff there, isn't there?
Yes. And I had to pay the bills. So you kind of just go with it. I was also never the person who really knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had some ideas. I knew I wanted to help people, but what does that even mean? And so I just kept kind of chugging along, hoping that this big passion, this big calling would emerge at some point. It did.
It did.
Eventually.
And when was that, and what was that?
Okay, so that path was fun. I was having a conversation the other day about this golden thread, finding the golden thread of what is it that is the thread through your life that really ultimately, when you look back, has led you to where you are.
Okay.
And it felt like more of a braid for me.
Okay.
Like there wasn't just one. So one was this innate desire to help people, and I didn't know what that would look like, but I was always that way. Nature, nurture, however you want to call it. And I think it was probably a little bit of both. And I always put other people first. And I always wanted to help people, peacemaker, mediator, that sort of role. And so that was always current in my life. Then I got into sales and I started learning business and strategy and business development and sort of having these increasingly responsible jobs. You know, these sales jobs that would just got bigger and bigger until, you know, I was looking at it one day thinking, I'm managing tens of millions of dollars
Oh, wow.
of accounts. Like, does anyone realize that I am not, like, how did I get this job? How am I able to do this, you know? So there was this business piece and this desire to help people. And in my 20s, I started my spiritual journey. And it was sort of this self-reflection mixed with self-taught. Like I didn't really have a teacher. I was just seeking and staying really open to finding teachers, which I eventually did. And through that, I found coaching.
Okay.
Fun fact, it was actually, my first coach was a love coach. But we can get into that.
Okay.
To help me find love. And it worked, by the way.
Apparently it did.
So I found coaching, and what I realized is I had done so much self-education that when I would listen to interviews and they would ask these coaches these difficult questions, I was answering them before the coach or this expert would answer. And so I finally combined all of those things. And it was a little bit of again, following the breadcrumbs. I started as a love coach.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard of such a thing.
Yeah. Love, dating, relationships, that sort of thing.
Well, I've been married for over 30 years, so I guess that's
You never
probably
needed
why.
one. Yeah. Lucky you.
Yeah, I know, really.
Lucky you. Yeah, it was really calling in your soulmate and finding your one. And so I started there and realized that that really fueled my desire, my passion to help people. And coaching is something that came natural, tapped into my experience with psychology, however limited it was. I'm not a therapist for sure. And then what I found was other coaches, I was meeting other people in the industry, and they just didn't understand the business side. There was a disconnect. So people were looking at me saying, well, how are you getting clients? What are you doing to grow your business? And I'm looking at them like, well, how are you not getting clients?
Yeah.
You know, what's going on? Because this is easy.
Now, when you were doing this, were you still working at your sales job?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So I got trained as a love coach. I was working for a nonprofit at the time.
Okay.
So it was more fundraising, and I had some other responsibilities. And I was working full time. I was traveling a ton internationally and domestically.
And you were in your 20s?
This was late 20s into my early 30s.
Okay.
And that was really fun and glamorous, and it was sort of one of the things I wanted to check off the list of, travel the world and have this, this professional role. And I was doing coaching on the side, on the weekends and in the evenings.
And you were getting paid for it.
And I was getting paid for it. Yeah. And so there was kind of a point where, you have the breaking point of, for me, I'm a very freedom motivated person. And I was able to telecommute for my day job, but it wasn't enough. I mean, I still felt really constricted by corporate in general. So by the time I was like tears in my coffee every morning on Monday, and my poor husband is like, okay, something's got to give, right? I knew I had to make the coaching thing work because it was my calling. It was on my heart. I naturally just drawn to it, and I needed out. But it felt very much not a running from corporate, but a running towards
something.
Yeah, that I really love, something I really love doing.
I like that phrase, tears in my morning coffee, or tears every morning. I've been there, done that. Oh my goodness, it is not a fun place to be.
No. There's something, it's if you really value freedom in your life, time freedom, owning your schedule, owning your income, being able to express your creativity without anyone putting any cap on it or any restrictions. I mean, I think you can resonate with that feeling if you've worked in corporate.
Well, I never worked in corporate, but what you were describing was my experience in physical therapy school, because like I told you, that was my second career. My first career was a respiratory therapist, and of course I was quite young as I was going through the 4-year program, but it was much different, where it was It was a really good program. I had 2 years at the college and then 2 years at a very large teaching hospital in Pittsburgh. It's the oldest hospital in the Pittsburgh area. It was a great place, and our instructors were wonderful. But my experience in physical therapy school was much different, and it wasn't nearly as supportive. And I didn't want my husband to know how miserable I really was, because here he was helping to put me through to get this master's degree and everything. But, you know, we were in school from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and then had to stay to study to catch up with all the material. You understand what that was like with the speech therapy. And then weekends and everything. And what I would do is I was so disciplined, I would cry on the way to school every morning for 20 minutes. And I knew when the 20 minutes were up, so then I would have enough time to compose myself to walk into the classroom. And then on the way home, it usually took me longer. There was more traffic. So I had 45 minutes.
Wow.
So I could cry for 45 minutes and then knew when to stop so I could pull myself together so my husband wouldn't know.
I have to acknowledge you for that, though. At least you were letting it out and you weren't just holding it in and hanging on to all of that anger.
Oh, no, there was no holding it in, but I did that later in life for other things. But, you know, you just, you know, driving in the car is a great place to just let it out. That and the shower is really good.
Yeah, I agree. I was never a crier before. I was a hold it in. That was my compensatory strategy growing up, right? We just... You know,
well, yeah, we kind of did. I mean, otherwise it might not have been pretty if we let it out.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what really triggered that journey into your spiritual, you know, journey? I mean, what was the process, and was it a gradual discovery, or was it?
It's a good question. Let's see. Was it gradual? In some ways, I think it was gradual. So I grew up, my mom is Wiccan.
Okay.
She was raised in the Catholic Church. No offense to anyone, but it's a very good way to get out of the Catholic Church, to go to Catholic school. And not
I thought you meant to turn Wiccan. That would do it
potentially. Potentially. So that was her path, and she was so great growing up in the way of not forcing her beliefs on us, right? So we had the opportunity to explore whatever we wanted. It was sort of like we knew that's what my mom practiced. If we were curious, we could ask and she would tell. But it wasn't sort of shoved down our throat. So it's interesting to see my siblings, you know, one's like an atheist, one's sort of agnostic, and then I went down this, quote, spiritual but not religious kind of path. So there was some interest in an early age in spirituality because of my mom, and I dabbled in it, but really set it down in my teen years. And I set it down because I was just lost. I was just so lost. And for a lot of reasons, there was a lot going on. And so when I was in my 20s, I had left now home and everything I knew. I was in LA, had to create my own community, my own family, and find my path again.
And what a big, huge change from a small little town in Kansas to LA.
Yeah.
Was it a shock to your system, or did you adapt pretty fast?
So... A fun fact, the first time I moved to LA, I couldn't get a job, and I was there for a couple of months and I failed. I couldn't make it work. So I was really in LA. I was in Venice Beach. It was just very LA, very different. And came to Denver, and it's sort of this small, big town, big, small town. That's what I meant to say. At the time, 2008, right? And then I went back out and I moved to a small beach community.
Okay.
And that was really, I think, life-saving for me, because I moved to Hermosa Beach. It's like 1 square mile. And I worked in Manhattan Beach, the 1 square mile next door, right? So I didn't have the crazy 405 commute, you know, none of that.
Insanity
is so right. And I could just be on the beach a bunch, and I knew everyone in town. So it felt very small town for me. And I think it was intentional that I created that, you know? It would have been too much to be in LA. That was never my scene anyway.
Yeah, I've been to LA only about 3 times, I think, for training, martial arts training. And that was enough. I think the longest time I was there was 4 days. And, you know, it's like, okay, what time's my plane taking off?
Yeah, it's, and I have so to me, it's soft spot, you know, and it's sort of this home away from home. My husband, when we fly in, he just gets like borderline panic, you know, looking out the window. He's like, that city just doesn't end. It's hours upon hours until you can escape, you know.
Would you fly into LAX? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I would always fly into Burbank.
Oh, smaller.
The Bob Hope Airport.
Yeah,
which was a completely different experience, I'm sure, than what going into LAX.
Yeah, I think it's just a smaller airport. Anyway, yeah, so.
Now, is your husband from here?
Denver.
He's from Denver.
Yep.
And how did you meet?
Tinder.
Oh, okay.
I see the look on your face because now I'm remembering you said you've been married for 30 years.
Yeah.
A dating app. Online. Yeah, we met online. But it was really an intentional process. So I had come out of a really toxic relationship. And this was right around the time I started working with a love coach, because I had been on this spiritual journey all for my 20s. And I'm turning 29, and I've created this sort of checklist of things that I wanted to, quote, manifest. And it was like boom, 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 knocking all of them off the list. I was traveling by myself, internationally and domestically. I was creating income that I wanted. I had gotten myself out of some pretty intense debt that I had gotten myself into in college. So all of these things were falling into place in my life except for love. And I was a serial monogamist. I mean, my first boyfriend, we dated for 7 years.
Wow.
So I didn't know how to really be single. And then I was in my 20s, and I spent all this time in LA dating, being single. And it was funny because the last straw was I actually met this guy who was raised in the town next door where I grew up, a small town from Kansas. We met in LA, and I was, like, oh my gosh, finally someone with the same values and priorities. And it was sort of the same response as every other guy, like, I'm not looking for anything serious, the whole thing.
I do remember that.
Yeah, I think that's timeless.
Yes, it is.
And I just remember thinking when that didn't work out, if it doesn't work here with him, it ain't working here, period. So I left LA. I moved to Santa Barbara. And then I was in this relationship that was sort of, I had planted the flag, so to speak, to say, I'm ready to settle down. I'm almost 30. This is the one piece that's missing. And it was this divine spiritual storm that was created that was sort of like, okay, are you serious? Because if you are, we're going to test you to make sure you're serious. So it was this perfect storm of like everything toxic that I needed to just get past and heal on my own in terms of how I was showing up in a relationship and the kind of person that I was attracting, right? These like, in hindsight, I think he might have been a narcissist, but that's okay because I played my role too, right? But it was sort of this like, okay, if you're serious, you're going to have to do the work now to move through some of your stuff to find the right person. And so after that relationship ended, I actually moved out of state for him, broke up 2 days after I got there, which was another, I feel, truly divine intervention, truly out-of-body experience. We broke up. And I said, okay, well, I've been thinking about moving back to Denver, and now I have this opportunity, and I'm going to take it. And I was working with a love coach who I eventually got trained with, and I was following her program, and I was sort of moving through this grief of the breakup, and also intentionally manifesting who it was I wanted to meet, which was sort of, in my mind, this mountain man, masculine energy. So,
I've never met the man, but just from what you've told me so far, I think that you did a good job.
Yeah, he's a big bearded, mountain man for
mountain
sure.
Man.
And the masculine energy, right? And that was really important to me because I wanted to create a space for myself where I could be in my feminine. And I was not at all aware of how to be in my feminine. Right? I had been in my masculine in sales and business.
Right.
Now for so long that I didn't know what that would mean to be in my feminine in a relationship. So I was learning these pieces, and then when I sort of set this like 6 months, I'm going to meet him. And I just kind of got clear, and it took about 8. And we met online, and he was a little resistant at first because he was somewhat fresh from a divorce. And a little guarded. And I was just, for me, I just knew. And I didn't know what, but I knew there was something there. So I kind of, in my masculine, kept pushing. And it was sort of that final test of like, you got to let go and you got to receive. And so by the time I just relaxed and stepped into my feminine, it was sort of like, oh, click. Now it works.
Okay, so there's a few things I would love to hear a little bit more about. Okay? I've been trying to keep track here in my very busy mind.
Interrupt me whenever you need.
Oh, no. Are you kidding? I'm fascinated. I can't interrupt you
Okay.
because I'm just sitting here mesmerized by everything that you're saying. I would like to hear a little bit more about manifesting.
Yeah, okay.
Because I hear about it a lot.
Yes.
And some people, I travel in a lot of different circles, and some people are all about the manifesting and the energy, and other people are completely like complete opposite. And as a matter of fact, I took ballet class this morning with some of them. So I'd like to hear a little bit more
Okay.
about the manifesting and when you started doing it and how you started doing it, and do you help your clients do that in business? And the other thing that I'd really like to hear a lot about is what you're meant by masculine energy. The feminine, pretty much got that one down. And I understand in my own mind and in my own experience what it is. But I think that in today's society, there's like some not clear distinctions, and almost that the male energy is a bad thing. And then I see a lot of these women who are saying that the male energy is a bad thing, and they're presenting with that same type of energy. And it's very confusing for even me, and I couldn't imagine what it's like for a man right now to try and figure out where they fit in. So I just open up that can of worms.
Okay, which one should we start with?
It's up to you.
Okay, so let's, you'll just don't let me forget the first one, the manifesting stuff. So
I've already got it bookmarked up here in the vault.
So let's talk masculine and feminine. And I teach about this in business too, quite a bit. So yes, I agree that there is a perception that the masculine is negative. And I also see from the masculine side that there's a perception that feminism can be negative. And the reality is it's like yin and yang, right? You have to have balance. And if either one are out of balance, then we have a problem. That's where you get into toxicity, right? Toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. So it's all about creating that balance.
Okay.
So feminine, just to define it quickly, feminine energy is more of a receiving. It's a softer energy that doesn't make it weaker. It's very, very powerful, as you and the listeners all know, right?
And you can see all my belts are over there, and there's my weapons rack, and my little ballet slippers and stuff.
I certainly would not challenge you to a fight.
But I look harmless. But when I want to put that energy out there, and it's very feminine and it's very soft, but it is so strong and so powerful.
Yeah.
And do you know who taught me that?
No.
The many magnificent men in my life.
Yes, I love hearing
the
that.
ones at the dojo, they probably taught me more about how to be a lady.
Yeah.
As you're taking somebody down,
Yeah.
and of course then my husband gave me the space to be able to explore that.
That's incredible.
It's very incredible,
incredible, yeah.
because even after I had only taken martial arts for a few weeks, and he said to me, I can really see the difference in you. I really think this is helping. I can see the change in you. And he's not quite as aware as, his awareness is a little bit dulled, but he could see it. And I says, oh, good. And you know what the best part is? And he said, what? I said, it's a great way to meet men. And he just looked at me and he says, whatever makes you happy, honey.
Oh, that is a good husband.
Why do you think I'm still married to him?
30 years though.
Well, we've been married 32 and we've been together 39.
Oh, okay. Wow. 30 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there still are times when I want to take a baseball bat to his head, but that's just life.
You don't have to always like someone.
That's right.
To love them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
No,
I just
that's okay.
wanted to...
That's a great story. Yeah, so just defining it. So feminine, we know, strong but soft at the same time.
And receptive.
Receptive and more creative, right? We create literally with our bodies, right? We are creators in our feminine energy. Masculine is a little bit different. You can create, but it's more of an action, right? Masculine is a little bit harder where it's more doing and action oriented, right? So the feel is very different, and I think most people can feel in their body if you say, okay, let's think about the feminine and being in your feminine, how you can sort of relax, versus if you say, let's be in our masculine and we sort of toughen up, right? So you can feel the differences. So if either one is out of balance, if it isn't in balance in your body, you're gonna know things are gonna start skewing one way or another. For example, if you are in your masculine energy a lot, and I know this to be true about me because I am masculine by nature, if I go too far without balancing out with feminine, I tend to lose my creativity. I get a little bit stuck There's some like motivation lost because I haven't allowed myself to rebound, right? It's like trying to inhale without ever exhaling.
Okay. And another question that just leads me in the way that my mind works is, could that eventually then lead to health problems?
I think so. So
physical disorders.
From my spiritual beliefs, yes, I believe so, because we tend to, if you're out of balance, things that there's an energy, and this actually leads into a little bit of what we'll talk about with manifesting, right? Everything is energy. So if we're not moving energy and flow through our body, it will get stuck and stagnant, right? So if you're too masculine, it could get stuck and stagnant up in the head space, and maybe you get tension in your neck or your shoulders, right? Because we're in our head way too much, versus dropping down into our intuition, into our gut, which is a feminine thing, right? So you can get really stuck in your energy, and that can start to manifest in physical ailments or disease.
And even just watching as you're gesturing and, you know, your body language settling like into your feminine and your intuition, that's your pelvis. And that's actually, you know, the area of your pelvis where all of your intuition is. It's where your strength is. It's where your power is.
Yeah. And again, me being a very masculine woman in my nature, I've had to learn that, and I'm still working on it. I actually work with an amazing teacher who's teaching me how to be more in my pelvis specifically.
Now would be a good time to learn that.
Yes. We're giggling because I'm expecting.
She is, and she's just glowing, and she's got this beautiful little baby bump, and it's so cute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
fun.
So in relationship, when it comes to masculine and feminine, that is where things get really tricky. And a lot of women today spend too much time in their masculine energy. And that's sort of a societal thing, to be quite honest. I think it goes back, and I could be wrong, it could be farther, but it's sort of, what I always say is, there was Rosie the Riveter, we can do it, right? But then that somehow turned into we can do it all, and we can do it all
who came up with that?
Anyone's help.
Right, exactly. Dumb idea.
Yeah, so we took it a little too far.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because now the pendulum shall swing back the other direction. So it just got a little bit skewed. And so oftentimes women are really highly in their masculine energy. And then they oftentimes want a masculine man. And as we know, two masculine, that's like putting two magnets together, they're going to repel. So there's going to be issues in there. And that oftentimes will come up as sort of this friction and the butting of heads. This is like the woman who doesn't need the door open for them.
Right.
Oh, of course I can open my own door.
Yeah.
And I'm also okay and comfortable receiving the door opening for me. So the man never has a chance to lead within the relationship because the woman is so busy trying to control that piece too. And it's exhausting to us. So then there's the part of us that's feminine that says, this is exhausting and now I resent you because you're not doing anything, but I'm not going to let you do anything anyway because I can do it all.
Right.
So we have this cycle of friction that keeps happening because we're not able to just step into our feminine. And that's not to say you have to like let the man rule the roost and make all the decisions. You can still be equal. But men by nature, if they are a masculine man, and not all men are, right? If they are a masculine man, they want to lead. And if we don't give them the opportunity, they're out of there.
Well, not only that, you're creating an inner turmoil. I think what you were describing, you know, in yourself, it's like, okay, I have to do this because I can do it all. And then you're starting to resent him. And it's just this incredible internal friction.
Yeah.
And something's going to give.
Yeah, so that's masculine and feminine. Did that answer your question?
It certainly did.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Happy to talk about that more. I just find it so fascinating, and it was just such a huge lesson for me in my relationship, and what I taught a lot when I was doing love coaching. Yeah.
So now let's talk about the manifesting.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to the love coaching, because I take it you're not doing that anymore?
No,
Okay.
not as much.
Okay.
I think it comes in here and there. You can't, you can take the girl out of the love coaching, but not the love coaching out of the girl.
Yeah.
Good. So manifesting. Okay. So we touched on this energy a little bit, and I know that you said you often see people who are either like super science, super heady, or they're like super woo woo. And I agree. I see that too. And I feel like coming from a very sciencey background and also having this upbringing that had a little bit of woo, I fall right down the middle. So when I teach about manifestation, I think I'm brilliant at teaching it.
And I'm sure you are.
Say so myself. Because I bring in both sides. So I try to explain the science behind it so it can sort of feed that part of your mind while also being very aware that there's some metaphysical components that we don't yet understand. So there is science to back up. Quantum physics is all about understanding this sort of what we consider to be metaphysical. Everything is energy, very, very dense objects like the table in front of us, for example, is a slow vibrating energy. And gases are a very high vibrating energy, right? So if everything around us, all of matter, is energy, then so are we. And things we can't see, like our thoughts, right? But we can't see them because they're a higher vibration. So when you get into the metaphysical side, it's really understanding that when we set an intention, the intention is a thought, it has a vibration. So if you're thinking things that are sort of subconscious and these beliefs that you've carried, they're going to have a lower vibration than what you actually want. So anything that's positive and good, abundant, things like that, they're going to have a higher vibration. That's just the way that it works, because it's sort of like closer to God, if you will, right? That's the highest vibration. If you don't believe in God, call it the universe or source or whatever you believe in. So if there's a thought that's rooted in fear is going to be a denser thought, right? When we're talking about things you can't see, relatively speaking, a lower vibration versus something that's based in love and joy. Yeah. So when we're manifesting, we can actually use some of these laws of science to create what we want in our life, creating with deliberate intention, which is what I learned how to do. So I was introduced to manifestation by the book, The Secret. So it was when I was living in Denver, and I worked for this company. It was this really, I call it a guerrilla sales, right? It was like kind of this multi-level marketing company. Yeah. And not network marketing, it was different. But anyway, I won't get into that. And we were all reading The Secret. And this was like all the rage at the time. And it was this idea about manifesting. And I was new here in town, and I was really into this like little community we had at work, and we were all practicing the secret and the laws of manifesting. And this was back when people listened to the radio in the car, right? So I was listening to the radio, and Jack Johnson was coming to Red Rocks, and I love Jack Johnson. I'm a very like beachy, like, chill music kind of gal. And his concert had sold out in about 45 minutes. So this was months before. Never thought we'd get tickets. And they said, every day this week, we're going to give away tickets to Jack Johnson at Red Rocks. And at the end of the week, we're going to pick one of those winners to go backstage and meet him. I was like, I'm going to manifest these tickets. And I marched into work, and we were having our little leadership meeting. And I said, I heard this on the radio, and I'm going to win those tickets. And
did everybody laugh at you?
They all laughed.
Of course.
Yeah. And they all played. So they all wanted the tickets too, right? So the next morning I'm driving to work, and I'm like trying to call in and dial in, but I'm in a rush, and there's traffic, and it's not really safe. At the time it wasn't illegal, but I was trying to call in. The line's busy, and they say, hey, you're live on air. And it was my boss. And she was like, hey, this is Amanda. Oh my gosh. Well, she didn't really know Jack Johnson, so she had one of the other guys sitting next to her because you had to answer a trivia question. And she won the tickets. And I was like, furious. Like, how dare you take my tickets, right?
How dare you steal my manifestation?
Yes. And contrary to the way manifestation works, there is no competition, right? Really, there is an abundance. So I charged in that morning with the strongest, most solid intention. And I was like, if ever I'm going to manifest anything, those tickets are mine. And at the end of the week, they're calling my name. And the next morning I called in, and I won the tickets. And on Friday they called me, and I got to go backstage and meet Jack Johnson.
Yay!
It was really fun. Anyway.
Now, did she get to go meet him?
I took her with me.
Oh, because you basically one-upped her.
I did one-up her. And so we had two pairs of tickets, and there was about 6 of us on the leadership team. So she was kind enough to buy a couple more tickets online. Okay. And so we had a group of us go, and I said, okay, you come with me. And we met Jack Johnson. We had a picture.
Oh, that was awfully nice of you.
Yeah. So that was the first time where I really experienced being deliberate and setting an intention, and then really knocking out any of the obstacles in the way, right? So I started playing with it from there. That was how it started.
And obviously it's been serving you quite well.
Yeah. It has served me quite well. And it's fun because one, I love teaching about it. 2, I love creating whatever I want in my life. And 3, I love seeing that shift in perception when people see it actually happen for someone. My husband is a great example, because when we first started dating, he thought that was just like the most out there thing. Total woo-woo, right? And this is where people get tripped up because they think, oh, well, if I think I'm going to win the lottery, then I'm going to win the lottery. And that's just never going to happen. Well, a couple things wrong with that.
Right.
One is you can't have that doubt. You can't live in that place, right? Two, you got to play the lottery. And that's the piece that most people miss is the taking action, right? So it's like, well, I'm going to have this great business, but I'm so afraid to put myself out there that I'm not going to tell anyone I'm actually running the business. But I've got my vision board.
How does that work out?
Doesn't.
That's what I thought.
Right? We just get more of this staying small. So it's fun to put it into play with my clients too and have them see for themselves how it shows up.
And you've got some fantastic clients. I've met some of them.
Yeah.
You do. And that's why I was kind of giggling a little bit and smiling when you were talking about what were you about the metaphysical and the quantum physics and all that stuff, because you of course are friends with Kimsey.
Yes.
Kimsey Self, who's been on the show before, and I'm going to have her again many times, and she's actually working on her PhD for natural health and healing with an emphasis on quantum physics.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I would have poo-pooed a lot of this. I mean, when I was a respiratory therapist and deeply ingrained in Western medicine, I remember when I had my back pain was so bad and so out of control. I was a chronic pain patient for 2.5 years. And when I finally broke down and tried acupuncture, I mean, I went in wearing a disguise because I didn't want anybody. It was on Hamden Avenue. It was right after my shift. So I was still wearing those bright green scrubs, which identified me as a respiratory therapist. If anybody knew, working at Swedish.
It's too sciencey to be in acupuncture.
I mean, my gosh, no, this just can't happen. And then from that moment on, it was like, there's something to this stuff.
I'm sure it is.
And then, just started my path and journey into all this self-awareness exploration. And so it's really fun.
There's always a fun little catalyst. Yeah, I love it. And the more I learn, the more I find it to be true. And the more I find it's founded in science.
Yeah.
They've done studies.
It is. But I think that the science is there, or it was there probably, generations ago. And then because we are so evolved, then we have new science, and that science poo-pooed the old science. And we find that in medicine a lot of times too. It's like all of a sudden now they're coming up with, oh, the connective tissue really is a living tissue. Well, duh.
Yeah.
So why did we not?
Well, at one time we all thought the earth was flat. Right?
Yeah.
And everyone believed it, and they take it to their gravestone, and scientists, I'm sure, had all their reasons why,
So tell us how people can find you.
Yeah, so I am brynbrown.com. That's B-R-Y-N, Bryn, one N, brynbrown.com. And I have a fun little Facebook group called Streamlined Success, the service-based entrepreneur. And so you can join there. It's on Facebook. You can search Streamline Your Success.
Okay. You're just delightful to talk to. I mean, the first time we talked on the phone was over an hour. But you've got some really fantastic stories, and you've got some incredible connections, and there's a lot about your backstory that you haven't shared. And that is fine. You will be back. You will be back. And whenever you want to, let us know. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Do connect with Bryn. She's an amazing person. Until next time, bye now. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.